Hey, how's everybody doing? Okay, okay. I'm gonna wait until the sun goes down so I can sleep. Oh, good. Um, Perfect timing. Okay. Uh, Gonna give you a little update here. Um, I can't remember. I think I did this a couple days ago, but I got this thing on. In theory, what this should be doing is, and it might not be working because I haven't been seeing a lot of stuff go into the nether, but definitely getting zombies in there. This might not work as I was hoping it would. Yeah, because it's already going down. Because I was thinking every time this thing cycled, like on one side, this thing would stop. The torch would come back on. It would pop this, and then when the torch came back on, it would pop it again, and it would send all those zombies into the. I got to work on this. This does not appear to be working the way I had hoped it would. Okay, I'm gonna work on getting over to where I'm gonna fish. And we'll get the fishing stream started. I don't. Okay, I think the cat wants to go out on the porch. I will open the door for her. Sometimes she does this. She goes over by, which I wouldn't care, but I don't need to be getting up for a wild goose chase. Did you want to come sit with me? Come on. Come sit with me. And she does that. Sometimes she actually wants to go out, and if I didn't have issues with my foot, I wouldn't care so much. But my thing is, with the way my foot is, I don't need that. If you don't want to go out, don't go hang out near the door, because she does that about a third of the time, where She goes over there, and then as soon as I get up and start opening the door, she basically comes over here like she wants to sit with me. Okay, now it ain't completely done, but I'm going to say it's like 95% done all the way around. I still got a little bit on the other side, but the lion's share of it is done. And topics for today, and because one of them I think is somewhat related, I'll go through I've been doing them at different parts of the stream. I really don't want to bore everybody every time they come on, but the 2 call to actions I got going right now, write everybody you vote for, if you don't mind, and ask them to legalize assisted suicide. It's a long story, but we're watching kids get killed every day. Nobody seems to give a shit. Not nobody, but you know what I mean. And we watch kids get gunned down, and if it's a Republican in the Supreme Court's got some madman walking around, so oh my God, we got to move heaven and earth to keep them safe. But kids are getting murdered all the time, and sometimes they've been murdered so violently that they can't identify them with dental records or fingerprints. And the Republican answer is to mail out DNA kits, so they can. I'm not making that up. I think it was Governor Abbott down in Texas, because there was one kid. The only reason they could identify him, it was either their backpack or their shoes. It was the only indication of whose kid it was. And so they, instead of doing the right thing and putting a stop to it. And if we live in a world like that, clearly you can give people like me that are sick and don't seem to be getting any better, can't work, and it's one of those things, and you see it online where they tell you, oh yes, such a high percentage of people that apply for disability the first time are denied. And I watched my brother go through it. He finally got on. But it's like they gotta let you fucking starve or let somebody else take care of you, and then finally, if you don't go to work, well then we'll throw you a couple crackers or something like that. And and I gotta be honest, I think I'm pretty sure I'd still be asking you, even if I had gotten on disability, because what you get for disability, I'm seeing it with my brother. It's not enough to live on. It's just not. And I kind of feel bad for these people, whether regardless of how they got disabled, whether they did it to themselves through poor choices or somebody did something to them, like what happened to me, as far as I can tell. It's just disgusting. It really is. Unemployment's the same way. Minimum wage is the same way. The lack of health care in this country. If our tax dollars can afford to pay these fucking shitbags in Congress, the ones that are jerking people off during a fucking Beetlejuice play, or fucking terrorists like Marjorie Taylor Greene and her group, if we can buy them health care, every fucking swinging dick in this country should have health care. I'm sorry. And the same health care. If we can provide health care for Mitch McConnell so he can sit there and, that shit he does where he freezes, his alien cyborg body, I'm just kidding. His alien cyborg body is getting an update from the fucking mothership or whatever the fuck is going on. Every one of us, again, every swinging dick on this planet, women included, should be having health care like that. It's just disgusting. And then the other thing, now this one directly ties into what we're going to be talking about today, at least in part. Write your congressman in Washington. I don't think it'd do any good to write the local ones. Write them and let them know that we need Chuck Schumer's amendment for the defense authorization bill and Christian Gillibrand and Senator Mark Rubio's amendment for the intelligence authorization bill. We need those passed. They need to be sent out of the House and Senate to the president so he can sign it. There's a lot of reasons why we should have it. Again, watch the podcast. I go into it in more detail. At certain times, I just don't want to nag on it because it's pretty in depth. But we need those, and what I'm going to be talking about today is starting off with the JFK assassination. It was just the anniversary of it a few weeks ago. And first thing I want to talk about, and I'm probably going to disrupt the cat because she hasn't been sitting with me today, so I wasn't really expecting her to come out. See if I can move this a little closer. And she, either somebody dropped one in the litter box or hang on. I really feel cheated. I got looting 3 on this baby too. I really feel cheated. And but we just had the anniversary, and some days I'm just not sure of anything. Yesterday was not a great day. Today's better, but I don't want to say it's a lot better. I did some stuff, and I'll tell you this, every day it's like it's stuff that should take 5 or 10 minutes, and it ends up taking me a while, and it wipes me out. And like stuff that's critical, I gotta check it before I do it. Measure a shitload of times and cut once so you don't fucking waste what you got. Fuck up. Patches, you can sit with me if you want, but I'm doing a podcast, and I'm happy to have you sit here. But if you want somebody that's gonna pay all that attention to you, gotta come back when the podcast is over, or just sit here and be a good girl. And it's not supper time. I don't know if you're waiting for supper time. Yeah, you got like a couple hours to go. You're like way early. And she's purring. Yeah, she's purring. She good kitty. And but the had the anniversary. Now there's been a lot of controversy with the Kennedy assassination. And literally, even if I was healthy and did like a 7 or 8 hour podcast, I'm not sure I have the ability to hit on everything. So I'm going to do the best I can. The reason that this was inspired, and I might do more than one of these, the reason I was inspired, and if I repeat myself going from what I do apologize, but my brother I think CNN had it, and it was called the 60s. There was one day where they had like 2 or 3 things on Kennedy. And one of them was called the 60s, and I believe it was 2 hours long. I don't know if you can find it on their website or if they put it up on YouTube or something like that. But I believe it was made for CNN or made by CNN. And he wanted to know if we could record it, and I thought about it, and I'm like, well, yeah, because I have been fascinated with that. I almost said no, and but we watched it. If I had it to do over again, I'm not entirely sure I would have had him record this one. I didn't know what it was about. And I got to tell you, the only reason, because at first I told him no, and then I thought about it, and then I told him to go ahead and record it, because there was some kind of a law passed that basically, and it's what they're modeling, like, I don't know if it's Christian Gillibrand or Schumer's. I think it's Schumer's. But this is what the UFO disclosure thing is modeled after. They passed a law, and it was supposed to be done by 2017, but I think they said Trump didn't do dick. He didn't do a damn thing on this. And so it fell to Biden to actually, do it when he got in there. But it was supposed to be done long before Biden got in there. It really was. And Biden finished it. And what they did was they went over, allegedly, all of the JFK documents, and they decided they were supposed to basically go through it and declassify it, because this is a thing. I'm going to try to be clear in here when I'm going to try and be very, very clear when I am pretty sure that something is true or positive something is true. But even when I do that, you got to understand that with my health issues and everything else, You should you never feel like you need to trust me, but if you do trust me, if I do earn that, trust but verify. Don't take this at its word. Well, if you're interested in it, look it up and verify it. And some of this stuff is not going to be easy to do. But like what I'm telling you now, I'm pretty sure that's the way it is. That's it was supposed to be done by 2017, and it was passed off on by the Republicans, and like usual, Democrats had to go in and fucking fix their bullshit, get the job done, just like Osama bin Laden. Um, and I figured, hey, with the maybe, because I've watched a lot of stuff on the Kennedy assassination, and like I said, I don't even think I'm pretty sure that happened in the '60s. I wasn't born until 1970. So, this has happened, almost a decade before I was born. And the I've seen a lot on this. So the rehashing the old stuff or having somebody do a brand new thing on old shit is just not interesting to me. It's really not. And this thing, and I don't know if this is what they did. There was a thing on I think I might have done a podcast on this. It was something with the Roswell thing. And I thought, well, maybe it's new. And it was National Geographic, I think. And I don't know if it was something that was done old or if they just took old clips and made a new documentary on it. But most of that, if not the whole thing, it really came off to me like they were trying to appear not biased, but we're biased as hell. Kind of like those people that say racist shit, and then when you try to let them know that, hey, that's racist, they go, oh, I can't be racist. I have a black friend. No, you absolutely can be racist and have a black friend. You just have to have either a black friend that is completely decent, and because you're a nice guy and other things, they don't sweat it, or they don't have the courage to stand up and tell you that you're a fucking racist piece of shit and break it up. Maybe they don't have a lot of friends. I don't know. But I really don't know which one it was. But it was clearly biased, but they really seemed to be doing a act on it to not look biased. And there was some of that in this. When I watched this thing, the one guy, I've seen him before over the years, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he loves his dog, that kind of stuff. But I would put him in for the JFK assassination, the same spot that I kind of put like Neil deGrasse Tyson and that Mick West guy, where they really don't seem to care about the truth. And I could be wrong on all of them. But it just seems to me like they really don't care about. I've said it with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think unless the aliens pick him up, take him away for a couple days, and use his asshole to invent some new fucking test, he's not going to believe it. He's just not. And Mick West is another one. Now, he's gotten better, but I really don't understand why the History Channel still has him on, because there's so much of his debunking that it really doesn't look like it passes the smell test for them to even put it on the air. And he has gotten better. He has gotten better. And because I made a comment to him that, there's other shows that when they try to debunk videos and stuff, if they're so sure of how they faked it, I go, they will try to duplicate it. And I go, if they can't get anything close to what they're doing, they admit that, hey, we can't prove it's a hoax. And so then he did one episode where he did that. He's, oh, yeah, this is what I think it is, and I'll try to show it to you. Well, what he did wasn't anywhere close. So again, that to me, they should have said, well, based on his, we're going to say that we don't know, because he wasn't able to do anywhere near what they, and these guys were like people at home without a studio. He's got access to all this scientific equipment, either that or he's not that good of a debunker. And he just couldn't, he got it close. He kind of, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't that close. and they should have ruled, yeah, well, we got the expert doing this, and they can't come anywhere near close, so we're just gonna say that we don't know. We'll get back to it later. And there have been a few times where what he said. I don't know if it made sense or not. I'm not a scientist. I don't think he is either, though. To be fair, but I'm not a scientist, but it did sound rational. And I really didn't know either way. But for the most part, he's not that good. We can get rid of that. It's got a curse of vanishing. And that was the bow, not the fishing rod. Well, anyways, the one I watched, like again, I don't know if it was all old clips. They all look. I don't think there's anything newer. But to be fair, it happened like 70 years ago now, or 60 years ago now. So there really anything new on it. Now, this one here, they didn't go into. It was kind of like the. It was kind of like the one that National Geographic did on Roswell. They stuck to, and I can't really shit on them. I'm not trying to shit on them for this because, again, like I said, if I had 8 hours, I couldn't cover everything. Well, they had 2 hours. They're probably a little more organized and a little more used to doing this thing, but 2 hours you couldn't go through everything anyways. So I'm not trying to shit on them on that, but they stuck with more of the bigger conspiracy theories, maybe not even the most credible ones. And I'm gonna go through it as much as I can. And I also want to say that we'll go through the documentary I watched first, and then probably at the tail end, if I fade, I won't be able to do it. But probably at the tail end, I'll talk about the possible UFO connection. And they were talking about, if I can remember right, they were talking about kind of Osborne's mental state. He was in the military and he got dishonorably discharged. He went over to Russia afterwards and he tried to renounce his American citizenship. They didn't want him. And I this one I haven't always heard. They don't always bring this one up. The claim is that he tried to kill himself when Russia wouldn't take him. And then he came back. And then he was kind of a radical over here. I think he went to Cuba. It's either when he went to Russia or when he went to Cuba, and I can't remember. I'm not 100% sure that he went to Cuba, but it was either on one of those trips he went, and I think it was Cuba, but I'm not 100% sure. And then they went through all of this, and they kind of pieced it together. They talked about Jack Ruby a little bit. Jack Ruby was a guy... worked for the mob. He ran, I think, a strip club. They might not. I think they called it a gentleman's club back then. It was basically a strip club, Titty City. And there was a guy I worked with. I went. We were working whenever we worked a lot of overtime. I'd go to the strip clubs. And then the one day, he was a younger guy. He was younger than me. And he goes, "Hey, you going to Titty City tonight?" And I looked at him. I started laughing. I go, "Dude," I go, if I ever open a strip club, I go, I might use that as a name. He goes, "Yeah, go ahead, man." But he asked me, he goes, "You going to Titty City tonight?" I go, "Yeah, actually I am." And but that's what he did, and he was connected to the mob. Mobsters would go to his club, and And then what happened was, after Oswald was arrested for killing Kennedy, he they were moving him, if I remember right. I think he was in a parking garage, and Jack Ruby just went up and fucking gunned him down in front of the cops. Just fucking gunned him down. And then he was arrested, and I honestly don't remember, but one of the shows I was watching, and I think it was this one that was, today, the one CNN did, the 60s, somebody made a comment, well, if this was a conspiracy and they had to silence it, why didn't they kill Ruby? He died several years after he got out of prison. Because he was mobbed up. And this is what I'm getting at there. And it was this one guy. There was more than one, but this guy was like just every fucking minute. Well, this is why this can't be true. And that he was the one that was just loudly like, well, if they had to cover everything up, why didn't they? Because he was the mob. It might not mean anything today, but back then they had that code of omerta. You don't talk. I think he knew, like, if any of that's true, if he would have talked, he'd have probably ended up dead. His best chance of surviving was to shut the fuck up. Because it ain't like today. It ain't like now where, everybody knows the first rat gets the biggest piece. They knew back then, rats get the shank. And it's you can't really say that and expect people to take you seriously. You just can't. And that was kind of the gist of it. It's stuff that this is like normal stuff that you'll find in the history books. It's accepted. Now what I want to talk about was they're the two best documentaries that I ever saw on the Kennedy assassination. One of them when I was a kid. I'm going to see if I can find it for you.
Playing from Casey's tab A8.
Alexa, volume 7. You used to be able to watch this for free. This thing was made in the 70s, I think. Okay, I found one, and I have no idea if this is okay. Okay. But it's Richard Bradley is the name of the channel, and it's like he's got them all in one big video. Okay. Now I changed the search to BBC Men Who Killed Kennedy 8-part. I added the 8-part, and it brought up a 44-minute one, The Men Who Killed Kennedy Part 8, The Love Affair. I'm trying to, because I can give you like a synopsis of them if I can actually get them with the names. Uh, let's take the BBC out of there. Let me bring up Google. YouTube's letting me down, but used to have all 8 of them, and you could bring all you type in the men who killed Kennedy and bring them right up. Uh, okay, if you Google it, it brings up. Well, this is saying 1988. This might be the right one. I don't know. I want to go to Wikipedia. Okay, according to Wikipedia, The Men Who Killed Kennedy began with two 50-minute segments originally aired on 25th of October 1988. So I would have seen these like right a little bit after I graduated then. Uh, entitled simply Part 1, Part 2. The programs were produced by Central Television for the ITV network and was followed 3 weeks later with a studio discussion on the issues titled The Story Continues, chaired by broadcaster Peter Sissons, Sissons. Uh, I don't know if this is the one I'm talking about. Okay. I thought these were. I'm not sure because I think these were on much earlier than this. I don't think these were anywhere near, but this does look like the right list. Episode list 1, the coup d'etat. Now this one here, if I remember right, that looked at uh, removing Kennedy for. If I remember this one right, this one here looked at whether he was removed to make way for Johnson. And like, and this has really nothing to do with the Kennedy assassination, but like when I was watching West Wing, after it had aired, and I think Bravo was the one. There was one of the channels that was showing it in syndication, and what they would do is when they would go to commercial break, they would give you little factoids. I think this is where I got this from, might not have. They'd show you little factoids about the White House. Well, in one of the discussions, and maybe it was somewhere else, but in one of the discussions, they were talking about uh, like Johnson didn't really like Kennedy. And one of the reasons was, and this was the weird thing, they go, you would think it would be for this, that, or the other thing. But one of the things that really pissed Johnson off is everybody acted like Kennedy was such a ladies' man, and Johnson felt that he was the bigger stud. He got his hands on more ass than that. That's what they were saying, and he really didn't like that. But there was some bad blood between the two, and I can't remember because I think they were getting ready. I think there was speculation on whether he would even be on the ticket. Because I think he got killed in 23, but I don't think it was near the end of so the election would have been, I think, in 64. And I think there was talk that he might not be on the ticket. because he wasn't necessarily needed as much as he was in the first election. And at least I think. I might be wrong. Again, I'm doing the best I can. Well, anyways, Jesus fucking Christ. All I want are some fucking skill books right now. I just need fucking mending. That's all I really care about. Just need mending. And they so that was the first one. The second one was the Forces of Darkness. That one isn't ringing any bells. These were all good. Another one was the Cover Up. That was number 3, and that they talked about basically this would have been after the fact. That one there, if I remember right, they talked a lot about the afterwards, like how they covered it up. Number 4 was the Patsy, and this tells you how they viewed this, because Oswald, and that he was a subject to Oswald, and that's where they ranked him in there, that they didn't even put him first. He was last. Feather falling. Then number 5 was the witnesses. This is where they talked about the witnesses in it. Uh, 6 was the truth will set you free, and this one here is not ringing an immediate bell. I think they were basically talking about getting to the truth. 7 was the smoking guns. This one here was, I think, talking about some of the evidence, at least evidence related to the guns. The love affair. The love affair talked about the women in Kennedy's life that may have led to it. And what I'm talking about is he was having sex with Marilyn Monroe. He was having sex with this is Kennedy. He was having sex with I think a Russian East German spy. Him or Bobby was having sex with someone that was connected to a mobster. He was slipping one in, and they were showing you that all these different women that he could. I mean, I'm not kidding you. The one game I play, it sounds like there was a consensual thing between the guy that used to run my team and some married women on the server, and all it was chat. And it sounds like it was consensual, going back and forth, and then one of the women, at least one of them, wanted to leave her husband for him. And he's like, whoa, we're just talking here, we're not, he wasn't even getting a hand job at the Beetlejuice play, and well, then that started all this shit that we're now dealing with. And Curse of Vanishing. And you take a mobster, you take, and again, I'm not advocating anything. I'm not doing this as a call to. I'm not suggesting this as a plan, but let's just say it's all true that Kennedy was banging the shit out of some Russian spy from East Germany or whatever. You got to think this is before the wall fell. A lot of you won't understand this because you weren't born then. I grew up during the Cold War. Half of Germany there was a wall going through the middle of Germany after World War II. The Allied sides took half of Germany. The Russians took the other half of Germany. China got shit. And they wanted to make sure that Germany, because you got to think about it. You go back to World War I, Germany lost, and then like 10, 20 years later, they had rebuilt, and so the whole idea was, we'll build a wall. You take half, keep it under your thumb. We'll take half, keep it under our thumb. And they wanted to make sure that Germany would not rebuild and create a third world war. And that was the whole plan of it. It's kind of like, the idea that we should have a ceasefire, for the Palestinians. It sounds like a good idea, and then Hamas and Palestine are raping women and taking hostages and all the, and then it just becomes a bad idea. And it was the same way there. Our side of Germany wasn't all that bad. What happened over on the other side? Ooh, that was not good. That was not good. And but that's where we were at with it. And then the last one, but just to get back to that, these guys are tearing up our server, and they're just insignificant little keyboard flobs in somebody's basement being assholes on the internet. Imagine if they were like a fucking mobster. Or let's just say you were in the military, or you were some high-ranking person in the CIA, and you basically had a fucking president fucking slipping it to a fucking, Russian, German spy. Do you think it's possible? Look at the shit going on now, where you got people that are doing a terrorist attack on the Capitol because they think some moron fucking lost an election, Do you think it's possible? There might have been some people that, decided to take it on, because he was slipping it. He wasn't just chatting with him on the internet. He was fucking banging the shit out of somebody's wife. I think it's possible. That's where this comes in at. And then the other one was the guilty men. It was all the people around it that looked guilty as hell that were never charged. They were never properly investigated. Another thing you might not be aware of is after the President of the United States was killed, after he was assassinated, there was only one trial. It's kind of like, hey, after January the 6th, the fucking Department of Justice, Garland, Wray, they seemed like they don't, to this day, they really seemed like they didn't want to go after Trump. They didn't want to go after any of the people in Congress that appeared to be involved in it. Still don't on them. The only reason they seemed like they wanted to go after Trump was because Congress made them look bad. They really did. They came to what really looked like, overwhelming guilt, overwhelming evidence of guilt. And so they finally did it. But if Garland had done his job aggressively, if Wray had done his job aggressively, I think the trials would already be over. I think he'd have been found guilty, and I think he'd be in jail for documents. I think he'd be in jail for trying to overthrow the election. All of the shit at the federal level might even be, and again, because nobody's even charged him with this yet. Nobody's charged him with any of the people that were murdered or harmed during that attack. Nobody's been charged for that. Some of those people that they charged, even the judges were like, oh, come on, what the fuck? Even some of the judges were like, look, I've looked at all the evidence. The judges going to our defense or Justice Department, the prosecutors are like, look, I looked through the evidence. Are you sure this is all you want to charge him with? And and then there was one of the judges that told him, it's like, look, there's parts of this country that are not taking this very seriously. And he goes, I'm looking at the evidence, and I'm looking at what you charged him with. I can see why half of this country isn't taking it seriously, because you're not taking it seriously. You're letting these guys off the hook. And so I don't know. A little bit of that going around where they had. Trying to keep this open so I can look stuff up, and it keeps shutting off on me. And but that was the guilty men, and there was a little bit of that going on back then, and there's a little bit of it going on right now, where these guilty fuckers, because they're connected to politicians, nobody seems to want to fucking do anything. The one we got now is that guy in Florida was human trafficking young women. He was paying young women to have sex with him. And he's like that Epstein guy. He seems to be getting away with it. Nobody's going to charge him. And now he's creating all this havoc in Washington, like and it might be that he's trying to keep this disclosure thing for the UFOs from coming off. But yet, all this shit that's out there on the Republicans, all this stuff that's out there on a conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin, his wife and daughter should have been thrown under the bus for price fixing, life needed medication, and they're getting away with it. But yet, fuck. I would really like another Smite book. I'm getting too much shit right now, and I just really don't want to fuck with it, so I'm just gonna throw all this shit out. Really, all I care about right now is getting mending books, and but that's what they were talking about. That was the second best documentary I've ever seen. You got to watch all 8 of them. But they go in. I don't think they go in again. I don't think they go into everything. You could give me 8 hours, and I'm not even sure I could half the stuff they did. Like one of the things that was brought up is I don't think he's a medical doctor. I think because he's got the title doctor, and he's been on this for a while. I don't even know if he's still alive. But the one I was watching this morning, he was really young, and I'm like, oh wow, man, he's pretty young. And then you also see him later where he's a pretty old guy. One of the things he said was, and some of this I am going to say my understanding, but he was talking about how all these mistakes that were made by the Secret Service. My understanding is Kennedy did not take his safety seriously. He wasn't worried about it. And you got to understand, back then, when you left office as president, you weren't given Secret Service protection as an ex-president. You just weren't. Like Harry Truman at that time, he had a retired cop that kind of kept an eye and felt that it was his patriot. I don't think he even got paid for it, but he felt it was his duty to kind of look after him. Well, after Kennedy got assassinated, they extended Secret Service to protection to the former presidents and their spouses. And they showed up at Harry Truman's. This I'm pretty sure of. They showed up at Harry Truman's, and they basically said that asked who he was, and he's like, "Well, I'm a retired police officer." I kind of go, "Oh, well, you won't be needed anymore." And I guess he looked at Truman. He goes, "Who the hell are these guys?" And I also heard that one of the former president that the Secret Service liked protecting the most was the Trumans. I think it was the Trumans because they said they didn't go anywhere. They were homebodies, so it was real easy to protect them. And the ones that were on that duty, they could basically, take turns taking courses to further their education and help out their career either, in the government or after they were done doing Secret Service shit. And I heard they really liked doing that. See, and then like before that, there was a guy we used to see on the, I only met him a couple times, heard a lot of stories about the guy, but he was a former World War II vet. I believe he was a Marine Raider in World War II. I don't know if he was full-blooded or partially blooded, but he had some Native American blood in him. And after I found out he died, I kind of looked him up. According to what I found online, he was like a protective service for Eleanor Roosevelt. And I don't know if that's when she was in office as First Lady or after her husband died and she was just like the person that was looking out for, because they didn't get Secret Service protection right away. And but he had protected Eleanor Roosevelt at one point. And I thought that was kind of cool. Well, anyways, but that's the best one I've ever seen. And this guy was talking about, like, and I remember which one this was. I don't know if it was the cover up, the Forces of Darkness. I think it was one of the earlier ones. And he went through step by step where they had screwed up at. And according to him, what do we got? According to him, and this I'm not going to blame on the Secret Service, at least not fully, because it sounds like it was encouraged by JFK. The Secret Service detail, instead of focusing on their job, they were out getting drunk. They were out at either the nightclubs or the strip clubs, and they were hung over a lot in the morning when they were protecting Kennedy. Kennedy was okay with that. He didn't really take his security that serious. There was a lot of people that felt back. The Secret Service probably the same way. Nobody's going to try and kill the president. That we're just here for show. And so they weren't in shape for this. And then the other thing was there was a lot of stuff that was not done. Like he went over the route they took. He goes, this route should have never been allowed. He goes, they should have had people looking at every step of this. And they should have been like, yeah, we got to take a different route because it got to, and it's basically right where he was shot, because they got to a point where they had to damn near do a U-turn when they went from one road to the other. And that means they had to slow down, and they were basically a fucking target. And that's what he was kind of getting at. And he's like, yeah, they should have never taken this. The other thing that they did was there were windows open. And he said, according to him, there was, you can come and sit with me, Patches, but you're not getting fed early. Yeah, you're welcome to come up and sit with me. Yes, you are. But I'm not getting up to feed you until it's supper time. You can get up here. Yeah, you get up here. Yeah, you be a good girl. Say hi to my stream. Yeah, you say hi to my stream. And I got a co-pilot for a couple minutes. She's going to leave me again probably in a little bit. And he said there should have been people in every building along the way, on every floor. And he goes, the minute one of those windows was open, the minute one of those curtains was pulled, the minute there was any activity at one of those windows or the curtains, there should have been somebody knocking on or kicking in that door, making sure it was safe. He goes, you look at the pictures going over that. There are all these windows that are open. There could have been snipers in any one of them. He said, that is not allowed. And he said, and you can't give the excuse, well, they didn't have the manpower, because according to him, there was a military branch of the Army who their sole purpose was to be there to back up the Secret Service. He said all they had to do was give a call, tell them how many were needed. Those men would have been deployed. They would have been answerable to the Secret Service, and they would have taken care of that. He goes, this should have never happened. And, yep, she leaving. This should have never happened according to him. And I'm gonna keep. I want the. At least until I get a stack of them, I'll keep the tags. And so but they cover a lot of shit in there. They absolutely cover a lot of shit in there. They don't cover the UFO connection, but I don't know if that was really. I don't really know if that was a thing back then. You didn't have the internet back then, so like wild ideas couldn't. I don't know if it's wild or not. I'm just saying ideas like that didn't get around as much because you didn't have the internet. On the left and the right, you've got some crazy shit that exists only because of the internet. If internet and modern day medication, a lot of these people that are pushing crazy shit, they would be sitting in puddles of their own urine, talking to themselves. If they didn't have the internet, they didn't have modern day medication. Now the other one that I can't remember the name of it, and this fucking thing shut off again. And JFK documentary. Okay, I believe it's called the JFK smoking gun. Oh fuck. So look at this shit. He just basically went under there until he suffocated. But it was a smoking gun, and this one came out in 2013. I don't know how soon the book came out. I don't know if that's the date of the book or if that's the date of the documentary, but it's The Smoking Gun. That is by far the best documentary that I have ever seen on the JFK assassination. And what that one was, there was a retired, and he's either Australian or a New Zealand retired cop who now works on cold cases. He does that as a hobby. I don't think he's making any money doing it. I think he made a shitload of money off of that book, but I don't think he's making it for the investigation. He's got to do the work of doing a book or a documentary. And I don't know if they did it together or if he was using that guy as a resource. But there was another guy involved in that, and he was, I believe, either a ballistic or a gun expert. And again, doing the best I can. Don't trust me. If you're interested, verify it. But on that documentary, there was a second guy, and I don't think he was law enforcement. I think he was some kind of a gun expert. He might be the only guy that's ever recreated the Oswald shot. And that one there, like I said, was one of the best ones. And, you know, if you're interested, don't go by just what I say because there's going to be so much more involved in it. But my understanding is, he goes, as a cop, the first thing he did is he went over the witness statements. And the witness statements told him there was more than one shooter. Because there were people that were either former military, former gun experts, or former law enforcement that basically said they smelled gunpowder, and where they were, if they were telling the truth that they smelled gunpowder, the winds were blowing the wrong way for Oswald to be the only shooter. Point blank. The other thing that he found was that there was forensic evidence from one of the autopsies that was wrong. Bullet locations were in the wrong spot. There was one bullet that was either too big or too small to be from Oswald's gun. He proved there was more than one shooter, in my opinion. He went over, I can't remember if he did it or if it was somebody else, but there was I don't know if he was military or not, but it was somebody involved in the x-rays. He was basically ordered to falsify x-rays. They dug that up. Another thing that I believe, and again, I'm doing the best I can. It might be where I'm conflating more than one documentary, and I think it's this one. And so some of the stuff might not be from that. And if it is, I apologize. But I think he uncovered that there was stuff withheld from the Warren Commission. There were valid witnesses that if they would have been called, if they would have told the Warren Commission what they knew or what they saw, it would have basically blown Oswald being the only shooter out of the water. And my understanding, my impression of it was one of the shooters, at least one bullet that hit Kennedy, came from a Secret Service agent. What it was, and he explains why he came to that conclusion. On the day of the shooting, they had, I believe, AR-15s, at least one AR-15, the heavy artillery, in one of the cars. The guy that was manning it was a rookie Secret Service agent. He was only supposed to be manning the car. He was the guy that took care of the car at the end of the day. He made sure it was gassed up. He cleaned it, all that shit. Well, there were so many drunk and hungover Secret Service agents, he got bumped up to where he was in one of the cars holding the AR-15. The bullet wound that did not match Oswald matches that rifle. Like the bullet in there was that size. There was... They basically explained that the way the car was, he was sitting on the back of the seat with the gun. Secret Service, when guns are drawn, usually have the safety off because if they need it, if they actually need the gun, they cover this a lot when you talk about it. Cops are generally taught, and I don't know about military, but cops are generally taught to draw the gun first, then do the safety. Secret Service are taught to disable the safety as they draw the gun, because that split second could mean the matter of life or death for whoever they're protecting. And so when he had that gun, it was entirely possible that safety was off. And it sounds like with the outfit he had on, the material that the seats were made out of, he could have easily slipped off that seat. And the speculation was that likely he discharged his gun when he slipped off the seat and fired it and killed Kennedy. That's the speculation. And but that was the best. But he went through a lot of shit in there. And then, you know, I want to say the guy that likely hid those witnesses from the Warren Commissioner, I think was the guy who later was known as Senator Arlen Specter. It sounds like he was the one that kept some of those key witnesses from coming to the Warren Commission. But that's, you can go watch it. You can make up your own mind if you're interested. But I will tell you this, and I am pretty sure I am factually right on this. But again, even if you're going to trust me, verify. Some of this stuff you might not be able to find easily. But the stuff I have seen, just to put this into perspective, because like I said, that thing I was watching this morning, I go, oh my God, that's just a conspiracy theory. It's nuts. That's just not possible. The government wouldn't do this. This didn't happen. That didn't happen. Well, my understanding is, you got the Zapruder film. There was a guy that was actually filming it, and I don't know if it was, I think it was video camera. And they could have eventually gotten it, but there would have been a chain of custody. There would have been a paper trail. And this guy was a patriot. This guy was willing to work with him. I can't remember what I was watching. Might have been something my brother had on a documentary about it. But they basically told the story of how they got the Zapruder film, which is just interesting. If you ever get a chance, I don't know what it was called, but if you ever get a chance, watch that, because the whole thing they had to go through so they could get a copy of that film, because they could have got a warrant, but it would have taken time. This guy was willing to work with him. He's like, well, and they go, well, where do you get these developed? And he was explaining to him that, well, if I do it the normal way, it's going to take a while. And he goes, we got other options. Well, they went somewhere, and he was escorted. I think they were even driving around, but they were escorting. But he had his film, He was cooperating. There was just no reason for them to be douchebags about it. Well, then what happened was the first place couldn't do it. There was something wrong with the first place. So then they had to go to Plan B, and I don't know, it was the second, third, or fourth, but they finally got somewhere where they could get the film developed. And then the law enforcement was like, well, is there any way we can get a rush on this? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I think it cost a little extra. And it was either the FBI or the Secret, whoever was with this guy, I think it was FBI, they go, we are more than happy to pay for the entire development as long as we can get copies. So he got his developed for free, if I'm not mistaken. And they put a rush on it. And I believe they made like 3 or 4 copies. Like when they developed it, then he would get a copy. He would get the original and a copy, I think. And then the government got like 2 or 3 copies for their purpose. Well, my understanding is when they originally released that, and I'm not sure he got his copy of that, but when they originally released it, there were frames that were put out of sequence. So when they originally released it, and again back then I don't know how you did that on accident. That was a major task to do. But my understanding on this is they released it with some of the frames out of sequence, so it was giving a false narrative. Almost like they were trying to get the film to back up whatever story they were telling. And another thing on that was while the autopsy was going on, and this is fairly widely known, I don't know if it was a state law or a local law, but where he was shot in Texas, I think it was a county law that all murders in that area have to be autopsied in that area. And the coroner that was insisting you can't take the body, they go, he's the president of the United States, he's under our care. He goes, I don't care. He goes, you're in this county, we have to do the autopsy. After we get the autopsy and we get a sign off from either the cops or the prosecutor, then you're welcome. They threatened the guy. They either took their gun out or they flashed in their gun, and he told them, you can basically get out of the way or we're going to run right over you. So they basically, again, if you want to be, if you want to talk about, holding people accountable so that they don't do it again, those Secret Service agents likely should have been, interfering, obstruction of justice, that's what they should have been charged with. They should have been charged with witness tampering or evidence tampering, all this shit. And some of this other stuff might not have happened if they'd have done that. If they would have had Secret Service agents that would have had to gone for jail for overstepping, some of the other shit they did might not have happened. And then, so they did. They took the body. Then when it got to, I don't know if it was, I don't know if they went to Bethesda. They either went to the Navy or the Army hospital in D.C. or in the D.C. area. And Bethesda is the Navy one. Walter Reed might be the Army one. I'm not entirely sure. Well, they took the body there for autopsy. Well, instead of getting the people there, and the guy, the ones in Texas would have probably been far better because they were probably used to dealing with more crime scenes than what the military doctors were. But they had younger doctors that would have been much better. They got like these high-ranking doctors who I'm not even sure were ever in an operating room. They're the ones that did the autopsy. And there were all these photos taken. They were taking photos as the autopsy was being done. My understanding is the Secret Service made all them disappear. There was a lot of evidence involving that the Secret Service just made all of it disappear. And, so again, you got like a pattern going on here. But they took it. Oh yeah, we'll get. And the FBI's like, well, if you're gonna take that, we're gonna need. Oh yeah, we'll get you copies. We'll get. And my understanding is none of that was ever seen again. It disappeared. You take. I don't know if it was 10 years, 20 years, and I don't remember the name of it. But there was. I think it was called an assassination committee or something like that. They took a look at this again, and one of the things they did is they ordered up some documents so they could reinvestigate. And the Secret Service, kind of like what they did, and again, you see a pattern then and now. But after January the 6th, the Secret Service was told flat out, hey, don't erase your phones. We need all that data for, future. They wiped out everything. So a lot of it, I don't know about all of it, but a lot of it was recovered. But they ignored the orders to save that data, to back up that data, and they just wiped it out. Well, there were all these documents, there was all this evidence that they were told was going to be needed, and they just destroyed it. Basically, it sounds like a day or two after they heard that commission was being empowered, they destroyed all that evidence, just gone. Another thing that I think is factual, during that commission, there was a policeman, I think he was a motorcycle cop, his broadcaster, his little microphone got locked on. So dispatch recorded the whole thing. And they knew where his location was at the time. And I believe this happened, this one here, and there might have been more than one. I think this was in the 90s. They had some acoustics experts look at that. And the acoustics experts determined that I can't remember if they determined there was more than one shooter because of the sound. They could tell all these shots did not come from the same location. I can't remember if they said it was just more than one or if they said it was specifically 3 different locations. But they pegged at least 2 locations where the shots were coming from. And I think they also determined that there were 4 shots. And you have to understand, when they were looking at this with the Warren Commission, they had to get it down to 3 shots because most of the people that have ever tried to recreate Oswald's shot can't do it. There's only been, I think, one guy that could actually recreate Oswald's shot, and he was doing it calmly. He was not trying to kill anybody from concealment. Oh, and another thing about that smoking gun, they don't think Oswald fired 3 shots. Because that was another thing. And again, me might not know it, but if you are someone that is a professional shooter or whatever, they said your fancy shooters, what they will usually do is they will put a spent cartridge, like that Carno thing that Oswald was using. I can't remember the name of the red, but it was like a something or other, Carno or something like that. They go, a lot of your professional shooters, not hunters or whatever, they'll keep an empty cartridge or a spent cartridge in there to keep dust from piling up in the gun. And then if you are shooting, that's the first one you eject. And what they noticed was from that balcony area, there was one shell casing away from the other 2. So they figured that was the one that he had in the gun to keep dust out of the gears, out of the mechanism of the gun. And he only fired 2 shots because the 2 by the window they figure are the 2 he shot. So it immediately started not adding up. And then when you go back to that 8-part series, one of the things they talked about on there is one of Oswald's shots missed and hit a curb. because somebody had told them that. Well, they went to go look at it. Somebody had cut a set right where it should have been. Somebody cut a section of that curb out. It was gone, and it was filled in with a replacement. Almost like somebody wanted to make the evidence disappear. That's another thing that has come out, and I think all of this is factual. Whether you can find, evidence of it, I don't know or not. But another thing is to this day, I think JFK's brain is missing. Nobody knows for sure officially where it is. They think it might have been given back to the family. But they said, like, if you actually had that, we've got more modern day techniques. If you had the remains of his brain, modern day forensic experts could look at it and give you a lot more information. But again, this all disappeared again because somebody did not want the truth on this coming out. They just didn't. Again, I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to claim I know what it is. But there is reasons why a rational person might think there's something funny going on here. And then that smoking gun one, that was one of the things that he found when he was investigating it. He was looking at the transcripts of the Warren Commission. And this was another bit of circumstantial evidence that pointed to maybe the Secret Service shot him on accident because they had one of the higher ranking people at the Secret Service. This would have been like in the top 3, top 5 positions at the Secret Service. And they brought up, I believe, and again, it might be a different one, but I think it was an AR-15 is the one they had. But it was a high-powered rifle like that. It wasn't a handgun. It wasn't a semi-automatic or a bolt action. It was an automatic. I believe it was a fully automatic rifle. They wanted the firepower. Well, the one guy asked about it, and the guy from the Secret Service, oh, we don't have anything like that. And and I don't know if it was Chief Warren or one of the other, but it was somebody that was very good at examining people. And they go, wait a minute, we had testimony from earlier that was talking about one of these guns. He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, we had them there, but we don't use them anymore. We just don't. And he goes, this was a new gun. They had just brought it in to give extra firepower to the Secret Service. And he goes, why was it suddenly removed and they didn't want to talk about it? He goes, again, it's pointing to the fact that there was a major screw up, and that's why they got rid of it. Because it hadn't been there long enough to really be tested to see how useful it was. They got rid of it because it killed Kennedy or helped kill Kennedy. And but that like I said, that one was one of the best. That was like the best thing I've ever seen on this. Well, then another little thing for trivia here. This was during one of the big anniversaries, and I can't remember what year it was, but it was either like the 90s would have been like a 30-year anniversary. It was either in the 90s or it was in the 2000s. What they did was it was the anniversary of the JFK assassination, and they brought in a panel of just fucking rock star forensic analysts. I can't think of the guy's name. I think it was Dr. Lee. He let me see if I can find him real quick for you. I want to make sure you got, because Dr. Lee, there are many Lees in a Chinese phone book because there are chins. And let's see here.
Playing from Casey's tab A8.
I think it's Dr. Lee. Okay, I think it's Henry C. Lee, Taiwanese American forensic scientist. I think that's the guy. He was one of them. And I mean, they had, I want to say it was like a 4 or 5 member panel, and they were all forensic experts. Dr. Lee, I think, was the most famous one, maybe even the best one. I don't know. Well, they were all talking about things. And when it got to Dr. Lee, and this ended it. Like after he spoke, it seemed like they cut early. This is just my opinion, my memory might be bad, but it seemed like they cut early after this, and you never heard another thing. But like when Dr. Lee got talking, because they were all talking about, oh well, this is what they did and why they did. He basically talked about what we could do now, you know. And what he did was, he goes, well, first of all, he goes, we could have known so much more, except for the Secret Service destroyed evidence yet again. This is like 3 times now we've talked about them destroying evidence necessary to uncovering a crime. He said they took the cars and they wiped them all down. He goes, there are so many questions. He goes, a lot of this speculation, he goes, most of the speculation and conspiracy theories could have been answered if they would not have cleaned those cars. You know, if they had been preserved to this day, he goes, there were things they would have known back then. There were a lot of things they didn't. He goes, we could look at those cars if they had never been touched, if they've been preserved as evidence. He goes, much like that shooter's nest in the books. Brothers help me out. I can't remember, but it's the book suppository building where he allegedly shot Kennedy. He goes, you know, they kept that behind glass. It's like a museum. And he goes, if they had not touched the cars, he goes, we could use modern forensic methods. We could use computer models. We could manipulate it. And he goes, we could tell you for a fact if there was one shooter, if there were multiple shooters. And he just went through the list. He goes, there's so many of these questions that could be definitively answered if they had not destroyed that evidence. Then another thing he was talking about, he goes, my understanding is they have protected that sniper's nest in the book suppository building. He goes, you could go in there, and he goes, we can now get fingerprints off of things we never could before. So he goes, and they fingerprinted everybody that worked for that company. So he goes, we could go back in there and we could dust that whole place for fingerprints again. We could get them off the boxes. We could get them off this. He goes, we could get DNA from in there now. He goes, I don't think they had DNA at all back then, but he goes, we could get DNA and check it against known family members and whatnot. And he said, if we go in there and we find any fingerprints that don't belong to the list, you know, if they're unknown fingerprints or if they're fingerprints that do, you know, like maybe they're known, mobsters, whatever. But he goes, if we find fingerprints that are not on that list of people that work there, he goes, that would probably be very telling. They're definitely possible suspects. And he goes, you know, we might even uncover that Oswald wasn't even the shooter. He was a patsy. Like, well, I'm not kidding you. I never heard another thing about that. It's like, and it did. It looked like they pulled that panel early because he was making too much sense. And I'm thinking, oh my God, yeah, you come on up. But he was making a lot of sense, and then nobody followed up on it. But that was something that I watched it. That was something that actually happened on there. And so, you know, hey, you know, but that's some of the stuff that I've gone over under the years. And then I'm trying to think. When you watch that original 8-part one that was done for the UK, there's some really weird shit that they come up. Apparently, there was a guy who, and it wasn't raining. There was a guy there that was standing there with an umbrella, and it looked like he was a lookout and a signal. And he was there with an umbrella, and it was open on a sunny day with no rain. And then I think around the time of the shooting, he closed it. There's another thing. Now, again, I don't know, but you can go watch it. And what I'm going to recommend is, if you're going to do this, okay, think it might be Stanley Kubrick. There was a director. Let me look this up here. Let me wait till. It's called JFK. It's got Kevin and Costner in it as I think he's playing the actual prosecutor. Okay, it's not Kubrick. It's Oliver Stone. He made this movie called JFK, and if you're interested, I liked it. I thought it was really good, and I've watched it more than once. You want to go watch that movie. The movie was based on the only actual prosecution of anybody around the Kennedy assassination, and it was in New Orleans. Yeah, wrap your head around that for a minute. And then what he did was, I don't know if it was made for Showtime or if he made it like the JFK movie, and Showtime was the first place I heard about having it. But I want to say it was like 20 years after the movie or 25 years after the movie, they took another look at the movie. And Whoopi Goldberg is narrating part of it, and I think there's one or two other people that narrated parts of it. And they took another look at the whole JFK case, that the only prosecution of it, and they were talking about that today, and that might have been in that thing I was watching on CNN. I think it might have been on that, but they were talking about that, and because the one guy said, they go, usually, and we can witness this now. Again, this is another thing where you can look at it now. Generally, a state level prosecutor will not bring a case, especially a big one like this, unless he thinks he's got the evidence. And the guy, the one that Costner is playing in there, he he looked like an idiot by the time it was over. And I just want to stress this. We have seen examples of this before or since. You look at the Roswell incident. They made evidence disappear. They absolutely made evidence disappear. You take a look at Bob Lazar. Now, maybe not. Maybe you don't believe this. I firmly believe Bob Lazar. It really looks to me like they scrubbed his identity. They deleted. They scrubbed his education history. They scrubbed his work history. George Knapp, and really, I think you have George Knapp to thank for that, because he basically were places where Bob Lazar claimed to work. He said, well, Bob Lazar took us in there. He was driving all over the place. They let him in. They knew him. This is before they scrubbed everything completely. But like, he had a workstation there. He said this place was like a briar patch, and he was just driving through the whole thing. Patches, it's not supper time. No, you got almost an hour to wait. Yeah, you got almost an hour. Yep, no, she's gonna leave. Yeah, she's gonna leave. She's gonna sit there and make me feel guilty. Ain't gonna work, but that's what she does. We go through this almost on a daily basis. And the one thing I will say is, when she's like this, I know she's got her appetite. I know she's having a good day if she's bugging me. Yeah. But they got a hold of one place, and he never worked here yet. And then they got a hold of one of their internal phone books. He's in it. And again, I want you to just sort of think about this for a minute. I've never had a job where I had a phone number. I might have a job where there's a phone number I can be reached at, but I have never had a job and I'm not saying I really want one either, but I have never had a job in my life where if you looked in the company directory, there'd be a number with my name next to it. I've never been that important. This guy was important enough that he had his name in the fucking phone directory for a company. You dial it, it goes to a phone on his desk. Every job I've had, if I got a phone call, I had to go to somebody else's desk or a break room to get the call. I'm just trying to put that into perspective. I really am. And but he did this, and it was an actual look at it. And then the thing they were saying again, I think this was a little bit like the one on Roswell. They were trying to make this guy look like he's an idiot in that thing on CNN. Well, his track record shows he wasn't an idiot. And like, like we're doing now with Trump and his lawyers and the prosecutors and the judges, they've got these people that were good prosecutors, well known, and they tell you, well, yeah, here's what they're thinking. This is why they're doing that. And they did have that on there. It was a little balanced because they did have that one guy going, well, usually prosecutors don't bring something unless this just doesn't make any sense. Well, then he was accused of threatening and bullying people to get them to, well, hey, let's be honest. Is that the first time you've ever heard of that? It's not the first time I've heard of it. In real cases, like with Dateline and whatever. This happened with Flynn and some of the others. They basically went in, hey, we got you on tape. We got you on tape talking about, talking to the Russians, planning to fuck up America and all that. And these guys plead guilty. That's kind of what he did. I mean, how many times, whether it be a cop show, a documentary, or something real, where they'll sit there and they'll be like, well, yeah, hey, and they're doing it right now to people in Trump. They're doing it maybe in New York. They're definitely doing it at the federal level, and they're doing it in Georgia, where they're like, hey, January 6th is the same thing. You got these prosecutors go, hey, you can plead guilty to this, that, and the other thing, and and some of them in Georgia, I think it is, they're not even going to get prosecuted. Hey, you plead guilty to this, no trial. Oh, you plead guilty to this, it's got to go before the judge, and we're going to recommend a really, really light sentence, probation. Judge doesn't have to go for it, but we'll recommend that you only get probation. Another guy, oh, well, you're going to have to spend some time in jail. They do that shit all the time. But they were making it in this thing, they were making it look like it was some dastardly plan to subvert justice by a prosecutor. Give me a fucking break. We see this every day almost, where these guys are like, hey, you work with us, you don't make us put on a trial, and you're only going to get ass raped in jail for 2 years, not 20. This is a normal thing. And that's what he did. And he got these people, with all the stuff, like, and I've talked about this before, the CIA, they drug people with LSD. You take a look at, if you go look into Air America during Vietnam, you go look at, oh God, we had this thing. It was right around the time of 9/11. I think it came out after 9/11. There was a guy who had been involved. I think he was Oliver North's boss during. Okay, hang on. No, you want? I can let you out on the porch. Nope, she's coming away from the door. I think he was Oliver North's boss in Admiral. I'm probably wrong, but I think his name was Admiral Poindexter. I'm not sure. And he was Ollie North's boss during the Iran-Contra thing. This was a guy that was now, after Iran-Contra, and I have a big thing where all these fucking Trump traitors, they're hiring them for the news and all this other stuff. This is why our country's going to shit. You take a look at Comey. They're not doing it anymore, but MSNBC, oh my God, they brought Comey on to talk about his book. It's this fucking rehabilitation tour for these fucking shitheads. They brought him on. Oh, here's his book. If it wouldn't have been for him, Hillary would have been president and Trump wouldn't have. If he would have not, if he would have went out and did to Trump what he did to Hillary, if he'd have went out and told everybody, oh yeah, Hillary might have misfiled from some things, and she had a private server that was more secure than the State Department's, and oh yeah, Trump's got like all this fucking interaction with Russian spies. Trump's got all these fucking contacts to Russia. There's a good chance, we're looking into it, but there's a good chance he's laundering money for him through his businesses. You tell me, if they would have done that. This is a guy that had to fucking blow the whistle on Hillary for things she was never, ever charged with. He finally had to come out, and then he basically smeared her again. He came out and said, well, yeah, she didn't really break the law, but here I'm going to give you just a limitless list of the things I think she's doing wrong. Well, you know what? Hillary talked to your wife, and she's got an endless list of things that your wife thinks you're doing. You don't spend enough time on foreplay. You could wait a little bit longer before you come. I mean, she could have done this to him, and she didn't. She's a little too classy for that. I'm not. But they brought this guy out, and they did that with Admiral Poindexter. This is a guy that should have been red flag. There should have been a big red flag on his file at the government level. Do not hire this guy. He's a treasonous piece of shit that sold guns to terrorists, breaking the law. No, he was hired at DARPA, and it came out that leading up to 9/11 and after, he was trying to develop. If you guys know what a futures market is for like oil and shit like that, he was trying to develop a futures market for terrorist attacks. He wanted people to be able to put money on terrorist attacks and make money. You can't make this shit up. So when you look at the stuff that has happened in our government, I'm not saying they did it. I don't know. But you can't tell me, like that one guy that was on the scene, oh, it never happened, never happened. You can't tell me that, yeah, we can tell you this. There are fucking shitty people working in the government. I'm not saying they did, but you can't sit there with a straight face and expect rational, grown-ass people to take you seriously when you say none of this shit's possible. Our government wouldn't do it. Our government has done far worse. So it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that prosecutor had the goods, and somebody to cover this up, regardless of what it was, made it all disappear. I'm not saying it happened. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know. But you can't tell me it isn't at least possible that happened. You know, another thing that they came out with, this was another theory, is that he was killed by Russian-connected people from Cuba, communists from Cuba, because he didn't support the Bay of Pigs. And that's a whole different can of worms that I'm not, but there is supporting evidence to suggest maybe. You know, again, don't know, but it was at least maybe possible. And the one thing I will tell you, and again, this is what I heard somewhere. I don't know how you verify it. There was somebody I saw being interviewed, and this would have been... Normally what happens is when you've got classified documents, it's either 25 or 50 years they're declassified. Well, one thing that this happened with, during World War II, Hitler refused to start the war until he could power 90% of his goals, his offense and defense, his actions, from within Germany. And so Germany didn't start the war. I keep saying Russia. Germany didn't start the war until they had developed synthetic fuel. And then with the synthetic fuel, because in the First World War, they got cut off from oil. And when they got embargoed from oil, the military collapsed. And he did not want to run into that again. So he basically would not start the war until he had this synthetic fuel. They made it out of coal. They took coal, put it through a process, and I believe they were making... I don't know if they had like our gasoline or if it was diesel, but they were also making rocket fuel out of that stuff. And after the war, and the speculation I've heard is that this was because of the oil companies, after the war, they sealed that information on how to do it. And then when the 50 years came up, so this would have been around 2000, give or take, when that 50 years came up, it was temporarily given to... There were some scientists, I believe they were at a university. They basically allowed them to work on it, look and see if there was any progress to it, and then they just they classified it again. They just sealed it up again for another 50 years. So that it's not an automatic, this stuff, because otherwise that synthetic fuel should be out there. And and again, they had vehicles that could run on either one. Well, you think about it. If we declassified that and allowed everybody to use it, at the very least, we could probably fuel our planes on this stuff, and we could probably fuel our diesel vehicles on it, and we could tell Russia and Saudi Arabia and all the other oil things, fuck you. We got to, and you know, and oh my God, you wanna have something that you can, because my understanding is I don't know if I don't know if it was a big environmental thing. Germany didn't care during the war, but we would at least have an option over the oil products that could maybe be a national security savior by not having to rely on Russia and everybody. But no, that's all sealed up, and we don't get it. And so this stuff with Kennedy should have all been declassified a while ago. What the fuck? And again, my understanding is with the Biden thing, I think they're done. Maybe they're still working on it. But there is a fair amount of those JFK files that are still sealed up. They're not going anywhere. You know, they're not coming out. That's big secret. And I don't even think Congress is allowed to see them. You know, because I've heard members of Congress saying they should just declassify. So they, at least some of the members of Congress haven't been allowed to see it, because they're basically saying, well, we should have all of that. You know, well, there was a guy I saw being interviewed, and it was on one of the anniversaries of the assassination, and they were talking to this guy, and one of the things he said was, either because of his classification or the fact that he was a scholar, I don't know what his background was, I don't remember it, but he was telling the interviewer that he has seen classified documents, and his understanding is that they should be getting, and this might be 20 years ago. This was not like a couple years ago. This was like 10, 15, 20 years ago or more that I saw this guy. But he said he was in the understanding that a lot of that was going to be coming declassified. He might have been talking about the end of the Clinton administration. He might have been talking about the end of the Bush administration. I don't even think Obama was in office yet. And he was under the impression this stuff was going to be declassified. I don't think it ever was. And he said, if it is declassified, he goes, I will have a new book, and I hope I can come back. Well, he never came back. He never wrote his book. But the way he was talking, and this is the thing a lot of people don't understand, right after the Kennedy assassination, my understanding is Russia as a whole, from the top down, did not order Kennedy to be assassinated. They were scared shitless that some rogue agent did something and it was going to come back to them. So they launched their own investigation into the Kennedy assassination. And the way this guy was talking, there was a lot of this stuff from Russia that we had. Probably Russia handed it over like, look, this is what we found. We had nothing to do. Because they didn't want it. They really did not want a third world war to start when they hadn't done it. You know, and again, if it was some rogue actor, they wanted to get to the bottom of it. They wanted to fucking start making some apologies, see if they could head the bullshit off at the pass. And they did their investigation. They handed it over. It sounds like that's my theory, because he didn't really get into where it came from, but he said it was Russian information, and it was his understanding that it was going to be declassified soon. But he said that like what he had seen really hauntingly matched up with the JFK film that Oliver Stone did. He said he goes, I'm not saying it's all the same, but he said the majority of the things he was speculating in that movie matched up with what he had seen from the Russian investigation. And so Oliver Stone may have had sources like with the fall of the Soviet Union, or before the fall of the Soviet Union. Maybe, you shell out a little bit of money and somebody shells you out the secret fucking documents so they can line their pockets. A little bit like Jared Kushner, cozying up to the Saudis and getting them to, give him $2 billion when Trump gets out of office. And again, where's the investigation on? Oh no, Hunter Biden's bat laptop. Yeah, fuck that. Um, but no, the that was the thing he had said. But again, none of that ever became declassified. We still don't know. And then the one thing I'll add, and there, I don't really know that much about this, but I've seen a few UFO shows where they O'Reilly. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna pitch all of this because I got plenty of saddles in there. I don't think I'm gonna get a mending book today, but there's talk, and this was the thing. Now we're getting into, and I've seen this before, but when I was watching that Need to Know podcast, I got about halfway through it. I think I quit watching. I think it was around where they were done with the JFK part of it, but I've seen it a couple different times. There is like, I know I've talked about this, uh, the secret UFO documents that were supposedly prepared for incoming President-elect uh, President-elect Eisenhower. Something 12. Hang on a second. Majestic 12. That's it. It kind of goes along with the Majestic 12. There is talk about a memo that looks like it was partially burned. My understanding is somebody, and I don't know if it was the White House, somebody had thrown it into a fireplace, I believe, to destroy it. And someone else recovered it and preserved it. It is apparently a document that talks about, and it's in code, but they basically, I'm going to break it down for you. If you, and I don't, let me see if I can find what the name of it is. I'm gonna try and wrap this up because well, she got about half an hour, but it's getting. I'm gonna try and have this wrapped up by 4, if not earlier, because 4 o'clock is when she gets supper. I'm kind of hungry too, and if she's nice enough not to bug me too much, I like to feed her on time. If she's being a real bitch about getting fed early, I've made her wait, kind of to teach her how to behave. Document on killing JFK over UFO. Okay. Uh, I'm gonna tell you what I got here. Uh, I think this will be the last thing. Like when I get, so I'm gonna kind of just pretend I'm fishing because I got to read a few things. Because here's the thing, and again, I don't know if any of this is real. I'm presenting it to you. Uh, I saw an interview with Eisenhower's granddaughter, and you can look this up. It's Hi there, sweetie. She's sitting there. She does this shit. She doesn't realize it doesn't work on me that much. She's sitting there staring at me to make me feel guilty. But when Eisenhower left office, he gave a speech on warning of the dangers of allowing a military industrial complex. It was his final speech when he was leaving office. And he warned us about allowing too much power to come into the hands of the military industrial complex. And I just want to state that when you look at the Wilson memo, which a congressperson entered into the congressional record, they took it that seriously. The Wilson memo was a guy who, by law, would have been informed about any classified program that had our money going to. He found some. According to this memo, he found some. He went to them, and they were pissed that he even knew how to get a hold of them. And when he explained to them, oh, look, the law says, and this is why we can't have any amnesty. We can't. He went to them and said, hey, look, you guys are in charge of a classified program. I'm in charge of it at the Pentagon. I have to be read in on all of it. My staff has to be read in. And they said, yeah, this came up a couple decades ago, and we read everybody in on it then under the promise we never had to do it again. And according to the memo, he was basically threatened. He was basically, because they said, well, you go to your bosses at the Pentagon, and if they support you, we'll do it. Well, what happened is when he reported to the Pentagon, he was basically told that if he didn't drop it, he'd be demoted and kicked out of the military. Maybe even his pension would be, it was just bad shit. And so he dropped it. And Eisenhower, so again, the Eisenhower thing on its own, fine. I've also heard, and I can't remember, I don't think I've done it this podcast. I think I was talking about it a little bit earlier. Hang on. Nope. And when Clinton got in there, he gave a guy a job in the White House counsel's office, and he told the guy, he goes, look, the guy was qualified, he absolutely was, but he told the guy, he goes, look, I got you this job. There's only two things I want you to do for me, and they were not inappropriate. He wasn't he wasn't trying to get Monica and her friends snuck in so he could fuck them with a cigar, and it was nothing like that. But he goes, I want you to find out what happened to Kennedy. And he goes, and it's something about UFOs. He wanted the truth on you. I think he said he wanted to know it was in Area 51, or if he wanted to know if it was either that or he wanted to know if Roswell was real. And there's some indication. I saw one, and it's all circumstantial. But the circumstantial stuff was Bill Clinton did get the military to look in, and they issued him a report, nothing to see here, move along, And then he did a thing where he's giving a public speech. And he basically said that he had gotten a letter from someone, and the person that was doing this said, I don't know if it was a real person or if he just made it up to get the issue out into the public. But it was somebody wrote him a letter and wanted to know the truth about UFOs. Are they really hiding that from us and blah, blah, blah. And Clinton, along the lines, and I'm not 100% sure I'm being word for word accurate, but he basically said, well, Joey, or whatever the kid's name was, if they found UFOs, they didn't tell me about it either, and I really want to know. Well, then what that did was that triggered the Pentagon to do a massive report titled Roswell Case Closed, and they gave it to him. And when you watch The West Wing was that they had a lot of White House insiders, Washington insiders, that advised the show, Sorkin, how things were done in the military. And there was one episode where, Charlie, he was the guy that, I can't remember what his title was. He was more than just a glorified door opener. But he's a guy who reported to the president. He was the guy who basically oh, yeah, we're coming up here. This is so-and-so. Here's these reports. Oh, you can't make that call until he's basically like a traffic director for the president. But he travels with him. So he doesn't have any official position, but he's got a very important job. He manages the president's daily schedule a lot of the time. He sometimes has to make sure people do not get in to see the president. He has a lot to do with what the president does and doesn't see. He's got an important job. Well, when the president was going somewhere, people were handing him stuff, and then he was giving it to his guy. In this case, Charlie. Well, one of the things Charlie got was it looked like a Christmas card, Well, when he opened it up, it was a military service member talking about how she has to have food stamps to feed her family. And he got it. And I can't remember. I think his old girlfriend, one of the president's daughters, his old girlfriend was dating this French dipshit, and they were talking about it. Well, then he made it sound like, well, Charlie couldn't get nothing done. So Charlie told someone that worked for him, like, hey, you know that thing from the, she goes, yeah, I was going to give it back to me. I'm going to see what I can do. Well, then what he did is he called somebody at the Pentagon who he played basketball with, somebody roughly his age, like might have been a sergeant. And he told him, he goes, hey, he goes, when the president was working the rope line today, he got handed something that got handed to me. And he goes, there's a military person complaining about needing food stamps. And he goes, I want to know who I can talk to about that. Is something I can get to you? Well, next thing you know, he's put on hold. And like, I want to say the guy was either a major, a colonel, or a one-star general. And he goes, yeah, whatever Charlie's, I mean, he was like Mr., it wasn't Charlie. It was whatever Charlie's, if Charlie's last name was Banks, and he goes, Mr. Banks, this is, Colonel Jessup or General Jessup. You can send that right over to me. And he's like, oh no. He goes, I'm not looking for anything serious. I was just trying to find, he goes, you get it to me, we'll take care of it. Well, then what happened was they did like this whole case closed thing. That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of that stuff they did in West Wing, don't discount it, because it was basically told to him by Washington insiders. The next thing he knows, the president is talking to him. He goes, hey, did you talk to someone about military people not getting enough money? And he goes, Mr. President, somebody handed it to you. I got it. And he goes, I called somebody I play basketball with. And he goes, it spiraled completely out of control at that point. He goes, yeah, he goes, I kind of figured it was somebody. Look, I'm not mad, but he goes, they issued a major report. And he goes, well, I didn't cause any problem. He goes, if they do what you want, they're gonna it's gonna defund like 2 aircraft carrier groups or something. And he goes, Mr. President, he goes, Charlie, don't sweat it. You got caught up in a battle between me and the Pentagon because he goes, I feel the military doesn't get paid enough, but he goes, you just got caught up in it, and it was what they did to Clinton. He was letting on that he wanted to know about UFOs. Well, then they make this huge fucking, paper albatross. They killed 50 trees to print it all and send it out. Roswell, case closed. And they're like, yeah, you liberal fucking weenie, knock it off. That was their attitude. And there's evidence of it when you see some of these shows that were made by people in the were around White House and that. But, there's an indication, because that guy, when he was being interviewed about this was the guy. He goes, well, yeah, he got me the job. He said, I want to know this and I want to know that. And he let it slip that after that case closed thing, Clinton kind of let it go because he was worried they were going to do to him what happened to Kennedy. That was his thing, and I don't think the president said it. But he said, I think the president was worried he was going to end up like JFK or something like that. Well, one of the theories is that JFK, aside from not doing what the military-industrial complex wanted him to do by, he was going to pull out, because that's another conspiracy. He was going to pull out of Vietnam. And so they got rid of him. Well, the UFO one kind of goes with that, because the theory was that he had been talking to whoever the premier of the Soviet Union was at that time. I don't know if it was Khrushchev or somebody else, but he had been talking to him about UFOs. And that's why he was killed in this burned memo. And you, like I said, you can go look it up. Let me open this fucking quitting thing back up again. But it's like if you just do a Google search, UFO, JFK UFO document or something like that, or killing JFK killing UFO should bring this up. Well, the NBC News has it. Is that JFK memo to the CIA about UFOs real? And let me go to that. This might be something else than what I was talking about. Yeah, to the director, and that's blacked out. Central Intelligence Agency. Classification review of all UFO intelligence files affecting national security. As I have discussed with you previously, I have initiated and have instructed James Webb, the guy that the telescope was named after, to develop a program with the Soviet Union in joint space and lunar exploration. It would be, and this is dated November 12th, 1963. This would have been right before he was killed, I think. And it would be very helpful if you would have the high threat cases reviewed with the purpose of identification of bona fide some of this I can't read. CIA and USAF sources. It's important that we make a clear distinction between the knowns and unknowns in the event the Soviets try to mistake our extended cooperation as a cover for intelligence gathering of their defense and space programs. And this was what they were talking about on Need to Know, because Grouch had found this, and Grouch is saying it's authentic. This is a fucking ad for Amazon. Okay, now this here, I'm just going to give it to you because I'm finding this document. This is what I'm finding. But, okay, now the UFO, or YouTube is saying that it is season 12, episode 9, and it might be the title of the episode, Was JFK Silenced? And, but this thing, it looked like it had been found in a fire, and it was. I wish I could find it, but they will cover it in that episode if you can look it up. Look for it. They run these marathons. If it's on, check it out. You might be able, if you have access to their website, you can go and watch it. But it'd be season 12, episode 9, according to that. And then the title might be Was JFK Silenced? They show it in there. There's talk in there, and I think they're using JFK, if I'm remembering, and again, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know, but I'm doing the best I can. But they were, I think, using JFK's Secret Service name, Lancer. That's what his code name was with Secret Service. They were talking about him, and it was really vague, kind of like the way Trump talks, like, you know. The one judge made a comment that, you know, he sounds like that King Edward, or that one of those old kings that said, "Can somebody not rid me of this troublesome priest?" And somebody basically took it as a message to kill the fucking archbishop. And she goes, Trump speaks like that. He speaks in a way where he can try to wiggle out of it when people actually do his crimes for him. And it was kind of like that. It was worded real carefully. And they talked about if things don't improve and there doesn't appear to be any precipitation, we are going to have to take steps to make things wet. And they were talking about him again, according to the people that were looking at it, they go, that's like talk for killing him. And, another reason why he might have been killed, and this is another conspiracy theory, it's not UFO related, but another one was, and this could be real, he was so pissed at the CIA in his first term, constantly trying to bait him into attacking Cuba. Because there were things he was promised. Well, yeah, it'll be this, it'll be that, and he told him, "I'm only going to go so far." And I'll be honest with you, before, and I am pretty sure I was drugged or poisoned. But when I was at General Motors, I would have these conversations with people, and you'd let them know, like, this is the way it is. Here's what's going to happen. And they would do the same thing that, I watch them when they talk about the CIA and Kennedy. They'd try to put you in an impossible spot, and then they were just fucking shocked when you kept your word. I would tell people, yeah, this is as far as I'm going. I'll do this. I'm not going to do anything. And then when you basically keep your word, then they're just shocked, because they felt like, oh, well, we're just going to put him in a situation and he'll cave. No, I won't cave. And, to me, keeping your job, keeping quality up, and not doing this bullshit you guys are doing, that's non-negotiable for me, and I paid the price for it. I hope nobody else ever has to, but they're probably somewhere doing it all fucking again in one of these right-to-work states. But they did. They got him set up in there, and then he didn't. And they figured, oh well, once it gets started and people start dying, he'll run to the rescue, and he didn't. And there was also a theory, and again, I don't know, but there was a theory that he was going to basically nerf the CIA. He was going to turn the CIA back into what it was when he was in the military during World War II. He was going to turn them back into more like the OSS. And the stuff that they did, the overthrow, he was going to turn that back over to the military. Because he felt he wasn't really having control over this agency, and they were doing all this horrible shit in his name. And the one thing I will add to this, and I started getting into it, kind of got sidetracked, but like Eisenhower left warning us about this military-industrial complex. And one of his granddaughters said that Majestic 12 was real. It was started under Truman, and it kind of morphed into something after Truman left, where he felt they were up to no good. And she said there was a day where he was going to out everything. And she goes, they stopped him. They heard about it in the family. Don't know. I do care about it. Usually I say don't know, don't care. I do care, but I really don't know. But she didn't look crazy. And you got the support of him making that comment as he left office about that speech about the military-industrial complex. You take the Wilson memo, and this is where I'm looking at now, where they've got these fucking weird charges against Hunter Biden. They've got these sudden with all the shit. If he's guilty, he's guilty. I don't care. Lock him up, kick him out of office. But it just seems funny that when you've got all this shit on the right, some of it even on the left with like Joe Manchin, things that I think are far worse than what Menendez did. You got people that tried to overthrow our government. Prosecutors are like, yeah, we got evidence. We should start investigating this. The AG and the FBI director say no. But yet we can fucking waste time and money on this little piddly shit. But people that tried to overthrow the government, and now you've got all this turmoil happening when they're trying to pass a budget where they want to try and pass declassification stuff for UFOs and the secret projects around them. It looks to me like, it's all linked, where she's talking, yeah, my grandfather was going to, out everybody, and they stopped him somehow. Well, they probably had him for fucking his driver. Eisenhower had a female driver that was kind of attractive, and it sounded like he was having an affair with her. They probably had shit on him. Would Hunter Biden even be getting charged if they weren't trying to cover this up? I don't know. Menendez. What was Hunter Biden and Menendez? Was this their shot at the Senate and the president? Hey, these amendments you want to open up the UFO stuff, make them go away, or we're going to make these guys go. Hey, Mr. President, what do you think's going to happen to your kid when we get him in prison? You better fucking play ball with us. That's what I fear. That's what I honestly fear. And, it's not that crazy to think that there might be something like this with Kennedy, too. I don't know. It's just about 4 o'clock here, and really for her, she's been putting on a good face for my stream. So I am going to work on getting her fed. Peace out, and hopefully I'll do another fishing stream tomorrow. If I get a chance to watch another one of those JFK documentaries, if it's good, I will maybe do this again tomorrow. It's the season for it. But I got a chance to watch the one this morning. If I get a chance to watch any of the other ones, and they're interesting, and I might have to repeat some of what I did today, but if it's interesting, I'll talk about that or at least mention it so you can go check it out. Peace out, and I hope everybody has a great weekend.